no idea what a pageant is, or they think they have an idea of what a pageant is, but then they get something that is pretty far from what pageantry is about. So before anything, I wanted to kind of clear up what pageants are really about, and then I'll move on and talk about some of my personal experiences, things that I've learned exclusively through pageants that I felt like weren't things that I was able to learn elsewhere. And then finally moving on into the real world impact that pageants have, because at the end of the day, not every single girl is going to compete in a pageant. So for girls that aren't competing in pageants, why should we care about them? Why are pageants relevant? And why are they not an archaic sport that we should just be banning right now? So first, pageant 101. What exactly is a pageant? I feel like for the most part, when I talk about pageants, most people, one of two things pop up in their mind. They either think pageants are the glitz and glamorous Miss Universe competition where a bunch of conventionally attractive women from all across the world all compete for the title of Miss Universe, or they think of the notorious Toddlers and Tiaras reality TV show, where basically a bunch of Southern moms put their daughters in a lot of makeup and sometimes not very age-appropriate clothing, and it's almost borderline child abuse. But I feel like as someone who is in this community, I could say that pageants are really none of the two. They're really something that is a lot more, they really are a lot more nuanced than being pretty and wearing dresses on stage. So to begin with, why do people even compete in pageants? What's the appeal? From my own experiences, I think there are two main reasons someone competes in a pageant. The first one is to build self-confidence, and that's a photo of me at one of my more recent pageants. And building self-confidence, it's something that I feel like a lot of people think it's kind of counterproductive. Like, how would pageants actually build your self-confidence? Because if you think about it, you're competing against a lot of conventionally attractive girls who, some are prettier than you, some are taller than you, some are skinnier than you, some are smarter than you. The list goes on. So how would you in this environment not be insecure about yourself, but rather more confident? And I think it really has to do with the fact of what pageants are about to begin with, and that's something that I'll elaborate on in the future and later in today's workshop. But one big reason people compete in pageants is to build self-confidence. And then the second big reason that individuals compete in pageants is the scholarship money. Pageants are known for giving away a lot of money to their winners. I think around 14% of pageants in the United States have a prize package worth over $100,000. And a lot of that goes with scholarship money. The Miss America organization, which is a scholarship pageant, they're known for giving away $2 million in scholarships annually. And the winner of Miss America gets a $50K scholarship prize. First runner-up gets $25K, and it goes down and down. So a lot of individuals who may have problems paying off their student debt or things like that, they choose pageants as a way to earn money or in order to pay off college, because we all know college is fairly expensive in America. So if any of you guys are interested in finding ways to get scholarships, definitely check out the Miss America organization. They offer a lot of scholarships for their contestants on a local, state, and national level. And okay, there we go. So competition breakdown. When you're competing in a pageant, what do they normally look at? So obviously it differs from pageant to pageant, but for the most part, there are four main segments. There's the gown competition, where you're basically judged by your poise, your confidence on stage, the ability to execute yourself in a elegant manner. And then there's the swimsuit competition, which for teens, it's typically a activewear competition just to be more age appropriate. And this is where you're kind of all sassy and you're on stage enjoying your moment, strutting down the runway. And for the most part, these first two competition portions are what kind of is the face of pageants. People, when you think of pageants, you think of the gown or the swimsuit competition. But anyone who is actually in the pageant world, I'd say, knows that pageants are a lot more about the private interview and the onstage question. In the pageant community, we have the saying where we always talk about the girl who wins the private interview portion wins the pageant. Because at the end of the day, the title holder, the winner that they're looking for someone that can represent their organization. And not only do they mean that in the sense that you have to be well put together physically, but you also have to be able to have the intellect, the brains, the ability to communicate effectively with everyone else. And so that's why the private interview section portion is so important, because that really tests your ability to speak about what you're passionate about to the judges. And then there's the onstage question segment, which is similar to the private interview, except that this is obviously not private. And this more tests your how well you can think on the spot of an answer and to be able to talk about what you're passionate about confidently. And that's the quick competition breakdown. But moving on into what pageants are really, really about, which is the heart of pageantry, and it's the community service. And this is the part where I feel like a lot of people do not know about pageants. Overall, what pageants are mainly for is to be able to serve your community as a title holder, to be able to use your platform, your title, whatever you're representing, whether that's New Mexico, Illinois, Dallas, and to be able to positively impact your communities. And here I just put a couple of photos of some of my pageant friends and what they're doing. Right here, I have my friend Madison Eddington, Miss New Mexico High, and she was giving out care packages during Thanksgiving weekend. Down here is Miss Illinois Team USA Victoria, and she was at the Special Olympics. Right here, there's my friend Katie, which is currently Miss Teen Dallas International, and she was giving away sandwiches at homeless shelters. And then down here, there's Haley Hurst. Sharing Brave, which is building respects and values for everyone, her platform to a bunch of elementary schoolers at a elementary school. These are all different ways that girls have been using their platform to impact their community. And in the world of pageants, we call this a pageant platform. Whatever thing you feel passionate about, and you make it into your platform. A lot of pageant girls choose to do things like eating disorders or promoting minorities in STEM or things like that as their pageant platforms, simply because they're things that they either feel passionate about or they're things that they want others to be able to learn more about. And for me, my pageant platform, I basically made my nonprofit as my platform. And right here, I have some photos of what my nonprofit has been doing. And also, in the very beginning of COVID, I used my platform to start a little community service project where we build surgical caps for frontliners all across the country. And me and my group of friends, we were able to make hand sew over 300 surgical caps, and we shipped them to around 20-30 hospitals across 25 states in the United States of America. So that's my personal community service involvement through pageantry. And for a lot of other girls, they do other things that they're passionate about. And that's basically a quick little pageant 101. what exactly pageants are, what they're meant to be, and the heart of pageantry, which is community service. Which leads me on to the second thing about pageants that I wanted to talk about today, which is the personal experiences that I've gained exclusively through pageants that I feel like wouldn't have happened anywhere else. So the first thing that I've gained that I mentioned already before is the self-confidence aspect of pageants. Right here, I have a photo of one of my pageant friends. Her name is Natalie. You can follow her on TikTok. She's TikTok famous. And here is kind of a before and after of before she started pageants as a freshman and now as a senior after being competing in pageants for around 3 years. There's obviously nothing wrong with being a horse girl. I think she looks adorable in the first photo. But I know from personal experiences talking with her, she feels a lot more confident about herself ever since competing in pageants. And so how do pageants exactly build this self-confidence? Because for a lot of people, like I said, it feels like pageants are something that would more so make you feel less confident about yourself rather than make you feel more confident. And it really has to do with the way pageants are structured. The onstage segments of pageants, the swimsuit portion or the gown portion, they're really about being able to feel yourself on stage and enjoying every single moment of being on that stage. I know my pageant coach, she always told me, Grace, the moment you get on that stage, the moment the girl in front of you leaves, you have to pretend that this is your party and you have to execute to the entire audience, welcome to my party, without verbally saying welcome to my party, obviously. And that's what's so important because that's ultimately what the judges are looking for. They're looking for the one girl that has that it factor, that is enjoying themselves the most on stage. And in order to really enjoy yourself on stage, you have to have that confidence. I know in Miss USA 2009, Kristen Dalton's book, The Sparkle Effect, she talked about how when she won Miss USA in 2009, the way the judges picked her as the winner was that because she was the contestant that had the sparkle effect in her eyes. She was the contestant that made everyone in the room feel like she was enjoying herself. She had so much confidence and she was just having the best time on that stage. And that's really how pageants really cater that self-confidence aspect, is because the girl that's the most confident in themselves is typically the winner. So it really is a way of building that confidence. And then similarly in the private interview section, how they're able to build that self-confidence is in the private interview section, you're communicating with the judges and you're also required to be able to feel confident in your answers, even when you have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. I know one of my friends, when she was 13, she competed in a pageant and she was asked like a political question of how are we going to solve homelessness in America? Or what are ways we can stop school shootings, gun control, things like that. And she was 13. She had no idea what she was supposed to say. But if anything, your actual content of your answer is important. But what's more important is sounding confident in what you say, even when sometimes you have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. And I think overall that's a fairly important and good life skill to be able to feel confident in what you're saying, even when you're at times unable to even understand or know what people are trying to ask you. And that's overall how pageants build that self-confidence. The competition portions are literally centered around being confident in yourself and executing that confidence to the audience. The second thing that I've been able to learn through pageants is that beauty and brains are not mutually exclusive. I know that the general stereotype surrounding pageant girls is that we're kind of, airheads, or we're the dumb blonde, kind of like the cheerleader stereotype, where we think that pageant girls, they're just beautiful individuals, but they probably don't have much nuance when it comes to intellect. And after joining the pageant community, I realized that, wow, that is such a big misconception. I mean, pageant girls, they're all so driven to do what they want to. They have their pageant platforms, they have their goals in life, they're impacting their communities already, even when they're literally in kindergarten. Like, I have met kindergarteners and elementary schoolers gather 500 books and donate them to the local library. Like, it's crazy. It's definitely beyond just beauty. It's beauty and brains. And here I have some examples of girls that really execute both, that beauty and brains are not mutually exclusive. Here we have Haley Colborn, Miss Teen USA 2018. She's currently a political science student at Princeton University. And then right here we have Cara Mudd, Miss America 2018, and she's currently a law student at Harvard, and she did pre-law at Brown University. So these are both crazy, intelligent young women that have so much potential in their future. And then here's more examples. We have the current reigning Miss America, Camille. I'm not even going to try to pronounce her last name, but she has a Bachelor of Science in both chemistry and biology. And for her talent competition, she did a science experiment on stage. And that was crazy for the pageant world because it really brought the intersectionality between pageants, beauty, and also STEM. It showed the world that, hey, these girls that are competing in pageants, they're not only trying to go in a career path of joining the entertainment industry or becoming a model. A lot of them actually have a lot of talent and a lot of passion in things like STEM as well. And so that was huge for the Miss America organization, and as well as for pageants overall, because it broke the stereotype that pageant girls are all models. A lot of them are science nerds as well. And then right here, I also included a photo of Miss USA 2016, Deshauna Barber. Before she started competing in pageants, she was actually in the US military. I know that sounds like a super big contrast, being a military girl and then becoming a pageant girl. But it really just shows that in pageants, the girls are doing so many things. You can be involved in STEM, you can be involved in the military, you can be a businesswoman. You don't just have to be a model. And that was really something that I learned after competing in pageants, that girls are passionate about a lot of things more than just being pretty and looking nice on a stage, I guess. And so the third and final thing that pageants really taught me was grit. Pageants have been single-handedly the thing that has taught me to have the most amount of grit and tenacity in my life. One of the funniest stories that I always tell people about my pageant experience, it's funny now, but at the time it was extremely embarrassing, was when I was competing at my first national pageant for the onstage personal introduction segment. So this wasn't me at that pageant, but this is basically what I would have looked like if I was during my personal introduction. Basically, it was a 1-minute personal introduction, memorize, you talk about yourself in front of the judges and an audience of like 500 people. And I was a little nervous because it was my first national pageant. I had my speech memorized, but when I got on stage, like 20 seconds in, I totally forgot my personal introduction, and I stood there in silence for a good 10 seconds, and everyone just stared at me. And I had no idea what I was supposed to do because I couldn't remember my personal introduction. I finally eventually remembered it after like 10 seconds. I finished it and I went off stage and cried like basically every other girl would have done in that situation. And even though I prepared so hard, I memorized my speech, and I compete in public speaking. Like, as someone who does speeches, I forgot my own speech. It was crazy for me, and it was definitely top one most embarrassing moment in my life. But in this pageant community, I felt like it's almost normalized to make mistakes. I mean, girls step on their dresses and fall all the time. Those are just things you cannot control. Sometimes your heel accidentally steps a hole in your dress and then you fall on stage. These are out of your control. But because it is more or less normalized in the world of pageants, it's not that big of a deal. And instead of really putting me down and being like, "Oh my gosh, I'm never gonna go compete in a pageant ever again because I just totally embarrassed myself." It was able to teach me, you know what, Grace? It was one experience. This one experience does not define your life. And I know that if you work hard and you continue to do this, you're going to come back from this mistake. Everything is a learning experience. Don't take it to heart. And the other thing that pageants have taught in the terms of grit is in the pageant world, we call it the first runner-up curse or the runner-up curse in general. I know in most competitions, there's not that much of a difference between being first, second, third. Obviously, first place gets the most prestige, but there's not that big of a difference. However, in the pageant world, it can be the difference of representing the entire universe or being nothing at all. It's an extremely big difference in the pageant world to be the winner and to be the first runner up. As the winner, you can have the opportunity to win scholarship prizes of $50,000, travel the world, use this platform for the greater good of society, or you're first runner up and you get absolutely none of that. And we always joke about in the pageant world that we're always the runner up, never the winner. I have one friend who has been competing in pageants since she was probably like 5. She's gotten 12 first runner-ups, 8 second runner-ups, like 4 third runner-ups, and the list goes on. There's the runner-up curse. It's just, it makes all of us feel extremely like, ugh, we were so close. We could have been that winner. But at the end of the day, all of us are competing in pageants, not because we want to win per se, but because the community is what makes us want to be there. And the experiences and the self-confidence that we can gain from it is why we're competing in pageants, not necessarily because we win. And so throughout this process, all the girls are able to gain so much grit and tenacity because we're basically taught that sometimes we just have to be patient. It might not be our moment, but as long as we work hard, one day our moment will come. And that's what has been like the pinnacle of pageants that has really impacted me on the greater scale of things, to be able to apply this grit that I've learned through pageants and apply it in other aspects of life as well. And so these are the 3 main things that from my own personal experiences that I've gained through pageants. But then what exactly is the real world impact of that? I mean, pageants are great, but why should you care? Because after this workshop, the number of you guys that are probably inspired to go compete in a pageant is probably slim. If you are inspired to go compete in a pageant after this, please let me know. I would be so ecstatic and so excited. But the reality is not everyone feels that like pageants are for them. So for the individuals that don't necessarily think that pageants are something that they're excited or that there's something that they want to do, why are pageants relevant in the greater scale of things? The first thing that I've already kind of talked about are pageant platforms. I talked about local pageant platforms from like high school girls and things like that, how we're all impacting our local communities, but there are greater impacts that pageant platforms have had on a national or an international level. For example, Miss Universe 2017, Demi Tebow, she talked about before she went on to win Miss South Africa, she was in an experience where she was held at gunpoint and basically kidnapped, but she took a chance and she fought back and she was able to escape. And from that experience, and after she won Miss South Africa, she wanted to use the national platform that she gained from being the next Miss South Africa, and she started her campaign #Unbreakable, where basically she went out and she taught young girls self-defense. And especially since she came, and a lot of the times she taught girls who were from rural areas of South Africa, girls that weren't able to afford these things, but this self-defense is such an important thing for so many young girls all across the world. And she was able to use her platform to be able to impact her South African community and teach the girls to protect themselves in situations like that. And then on the right, I have Catriona Gray, Miss Universe 2018, and her pageant platform was mostly about child poverty, advocating for it. She's from the Philippines, and in the Philippines, there's a lot of slums around the Greater Manila area and also just overall. And there's a lot of children who don't have the privilege of having an education. And so as Miss Universe, what she did was she spent a lot of time raising money and visiting these education centers, these schools, and to pretty much inspire the younger generation that as long as you have a dream, to go out and reach for it. One of her stories that she said that I felt like really was something that impacted me was she said that one time when she was visiting a school, a young girl that was around the age of 5 told her that she didn't have any dreams because those dreams just were not meant for her. And for a 5-year-old to think that you dreams are not meant for her, it seems it's extremely sad, but because she was able to, Catriona was able to go out and use her platform, she was able to go out and basically change these girls' opinions that, hey, for anyone with a dream, know that your dreams are valid, and on your path to achieving that dream, you're never going to be denied of it, and you're only going to be redirected. That's one of her quotes that has really stuck to me. And the fact that she was able to use her platform to go out and change the opinions of all these young girls who might have felt like that their dreams were invalid was definitely such a big impact on the greater scale of things. And then so aside from pageant platforms, there's also a sort of an intersectionality between pageants and politics. Excuse me. A lot of you guys probably don't know, but a lot of female politicians actually used to compete in pageants. Here I listed some examples. We have Kristi Noem. She's the current South Dakota governor, and she's also the first female South Dakota governor. And then right here we have Rosie. I'm not even going to try to pronounce her last name, but she's a Sri Lankan politician. She also used to compete in pageants. Right here we have Irene, and she was a Venezuelan governor. And then there's Sarah Palin, who was the youngest and first female Alaskan governor. A lot of girls that are pageant girls go on and pursue a career in politics. And I think that has to do with the fact that in pageants, you're really required to give back to your community by doing a lot of community service. And ultimately, that's what politics are about. Politics are representing your state, your country, or your local district and passing bills for your people. And that's really applicable to pageants as well, because you're either representing your local title or your state or even your country and doing things for your community. So there's a lot of connection between the two that I feel like a lot of people don't really realize or think of. But there are so many similarities between the two, and I feel like that's why a lot of pageant girls go on and decide to do politics. But that's definitely something that I feel like a lot of people overlook. pageants and politics are fairly connected, and that's a major real world impact, because when you go into the world of politics, you're really going out and you're finding ways to make society better and more beneficial to everyone. And so finally, the last real world impact that I think pageants have is girls versus societal beauty standards. I know currently in the world of social media, a lot of girls feel like they're they see things like Instagram models that have these ideal bodies, or Victoria's Secret models, and we're kind of taught that, hey, if you want to be beautiful, you have to look a certain way. And in turn, it makes a lot of girls feel insecure. I mean, these are just some of the statistics that I got out of thousands and thousands of statistics about how girls feel insecure about themselves. I mean, the first one, 92% of girls feel insecure about their own bodies. This one was from a Dove campaign that I found. And then the second one is over 70% of girls ages 15 to 17 actually avoid normal activities such as attending school because they feel like they look bad. And I know in middle school, that's exactly something that I experienced. And I know a lot of you guys probably experience this too. Sometimes we don't feel like going out in public because we just feel insecure about ourselves. And then the last statistic, almost 100% of girls feel like there's some sort of pressure from an external source, whether that's family, society, for them to look a certain way. We're a society that promotes things like diet culture and traditional standards of beauty. And ultimately, that takes such a toll on so many girls. However, for the girls that compete in pageants, I feel like we could all agree that through pageants, these things have been able to mean nothing to us, because at the end of the day, through pageants, we've learned that we are enough. We don't need society to tell us that we have to look a certain way to be beautiful. And so that's for the girls that compete in pageants and how pageants were able to impact them. But then for the girls that don't necessarily compete in pageants, why are pageants relevant in the sense that they change societal standards? And I think that it has to do with the fact that pageants are typically considered the trailblazer for defining beauty standards. For a lot of parts of the world, the girl who wins Miss Universe, the girl who wins their Miss USA or Miss Philippines, a national title, I'm sorry, someone sent me something in the chat. Okay, let me get back to it. Okay, sorry, I had to read something in the chat. Okay, they're really, and I lost my train of thought. Anyways, but a lot of times pageants are the trailblazer of what sets beauty. And as pageants become more progressive and we're having title holders that are not just the conventional standard of beauty of having blonde hair and blued eyes, it can really shift that narrative. It can shift what beauty means on a greater scale of things. And it can make a lot of girls learn that they don't have to look a certain way in order to be deemed beautiful according to society. One of the biggest examples I can think of was last year. We had 4 African American women, or 3 African American women, win the 3 biggest pageants in America: Miss America, Miss USA, Miss Universe, and also Miss World. They were all Black women. And because of that, they were really able to redefine beauty, especially in America where there's so much racial diversity, but there's still very much sort of this conventional idea that in order to be beautiful in America, you have to be a Caucasian girl with blonde hair and blued eyes. The fact that we were able to have a 4 Black women win major pageant titles was able to really shift that narrative and teach the younger generation of young girls that, hey, you do not have to look a certain way to be beautiful. You can have dark skin, you can be skinny, or you can be normal, you could be thick. It doesn't matter. There is no monolith when it comes to beauty, and I think that's the big major impact that pageants have, is the fact that pageants have the ability to redefine beauty all across the world. And that's extremely relevant right now, especially in a world of social media where I feel like we're sort of promoting this conventional idea of beauty, but by being able to use pageants to kind of counteract that is one of the biggest impacts that I think pageants can have overall. So a little recap. I know I kind of threw a lot of things at all of y'all at once, but recap on the 3 most important things that I feel like are important. If you take anything out of this 1 hour, is that 1, pageants are there to build self-confidence. If you're someone that you feel like you're really insecure, but you want to try the world of modeling, go compete in a pageant. Try it out. It might not be your cup of tea, but I know for me and all of my pageant friends, pageants have been the #1 thing for us to build our self-confidence. And the second thing that is important about pageants is the community service aspect. The ability to use our platform for the greater good of our community is what pageants are really about, whether that's a local pageant platform, or a state pageant platform, or an international pageant platform. They're all ways of impacting your community on different scales. And that's what pageants stress so much importance on. And then finally, the big major one is how pageants can redefine beauty standards in America and also all across the world. This is one of my favorite photos ever taken, literally. It's of Miss Teen USA, Miss USA, and Miss America. And they're being strong and confident Black women redefining beauty in America. I mean, they just look so like, they look like they're baddies. I'm sorry, that's just what I feel. And I feel like it's so amazing that these girls can be able to redefine beauty and to show that, hey, pageants are not just a bunch of white girls with blonde hair and blue eyes. There's so much nuance in pageants, and there's a lot more diversity. And with that, we can have the ability to redefine what beauty is in this society. And so that's basically it. Thank you guys so much for listening. I was extremely excited about this because I was able to talk about something that I'm extremely passionate about. And I also here I have my email, my Instagram. If you have any questions, you can shoot me a DM or shoot me an email. And then if you want to add me on LinkedIn, I have my link tree down here. And on it, I have my LinkedIn and things like that. And if any of you guys have any questions, you guys can go ahead and drop it into the chat box and I will go through them. Okay, hold on, let me read. Okay, so one girl asked if you want to start pageants, how should you start? Where can you get started? That's super easy. Whether you're in middle school, elementary school, or high school, there's going to be a pageant for you. Let me drop in the chat box some major pageants that I think are good for beginners, for people that are kind of new to the industry and want to find a way to get started. One of my first pageant that I went to was under the system of National American Miss. It's an extremely natural pageant. There's not that much glitzy and glamorous. You're not going to feel intimidated by any of the girls. They're super nice. you can, if any of you guys are interested in pageants, I think National American Miss is one of the best start points to get into pageants, because it's definitely for beginners. It's for girls that don't really have much experience, and it's an extremely fun it's an extremely fun experience. I went to nationals for National American Miss. It was in Hollywood, California. We went to Disneyland. It was super fun, and at the same time, we were able to do things outside of competing in pageants as well. Thank you so much for linking my link tree. Um, I love animals, though. If I were to participate and give back to my community by helping animals, is that technically giving back if you're not helping people? Of course, that's giving back. Yeah, you can definitely help. And I have friends, their pageant platform are things like Don't Shop, Adopt, where they're basically encouraging individuals to go adopt and pets from homeless shelters, not homeless, I'm so sorry, from shelter animal shelters, and not go and buy them from a breeder. That's, you definitely don't have to be impacting people. You can be impacting the community in any way. So yeah, if you wanted to impact your community in terms of helping animals, that's definitely such a great idea. And next question, how has COVID affected pageants? And is 18 too old to be in a pageant for the first time? There's never an age to be too old for anything in my opinion, especially in the world of pageants. I know girls who compete in their first, my mom competed in her first pageant when she was like 30 something. So there's definitely not an age to be too old. 18 is perfect if you want to go into more adult pageants, because teen pageants typically range from 13 to 18. 18 is a perfect age if you want to compete in things like the Miss America or Miss USA system. You definitely will never be too old. 18's definitely don't worry about your age. And how has COVID affected pageants? I think if anything, COVID has made all the girls get more creative with impacting their community, because obviously you can't physically go anywhere to do things anymore. I know a lot of girls have been hosting Instagram lives and talking about things, and also by doing virtual conferences and virtual interviews like what I'm currently doing. These are all things that girls have kind of been shifting towards because of this COVID world. And I feel like you don't have to go out and about and do like the craziest, biggest things to impact your community. I know a lot of girls simply do things like self-empowerment Sundays, where every Sunday they film a video about building self-confidence and they post it onto their Instagram. That's a way of helping out their community as well. You don't necessarily have to be physically going out everywhere. You can also film segments and installments of ways to become more confident about yourself as a way of impacting your community. How do we convince our parents to let us participate in a pageant if you're passionate or it's something you enjoy? I feel like if anything, I know a lot of girls that I'm friends with through the world of pageants. It took a lot of convincing for them to allow their parents to compete in a pageant. I think it's so important to really just tell them that pageants are not about the looks and that they're not objectifying women. Really go on and research the pageant you're going to compete in, like the one that I just put in, National American Miss. They're definitely super, super, super natural. There's not a lot of makeup and a lot of like things like that, which I feel like in the grand scheme of things is, if you have more conservative parents, they're things that they will accept more. So I'd say definitely talk to your parents and allow them to know what pageants are. Because like I said in the beginning of this, a lot of people still think pageants are walking in bikinis on stage or just trying to look pretty and seduce the audience or something like that. It's so important that you really allow your parents or whoever you're trying to convince to allow you to enter in a pageant. Tell them what pageants are really about. They're for impacting your community, and a lot of times you're being on stage for yourself, you're doing all this for yourself and not to kind of you're not doing it for other people, you're not trying to impress anyone per se. But yeah, if you have parents that might not be very supportive of you entering in a pageant, definitely research the pageant. Make sure it's a pageant that is a lot more a lot of conservative parents are more open to, for example, National American Miss, and we could just go from there. Um, who the girl who sent me this direct message, you can also DM me on Instagram afterwards. If you want to, I can probably tell you a little more about it, how to convince your parents.